The 5-Minute Photographer with Shelton Muller.
Just because you've encountered a dynamic scene doesn't automatically mean the photograph will be dynamic. Photographs are really about taking things and framing them. That's what we do whenever we raise our camera to our eye. But just because something is beautiful or interesting or dynamic within itself doesn't mean that it will be a dynamic photograph. And if it is, it's sort of like saying, well, here's something somebody else did, somebody else made. Here's something that's already beautiful. I've just put a frame around it. Can you really call it your own? Successful photography is often about taking ordinary things and putting a frame around them, and by so doing, making them yours. We come across these objects every day, and by the simple act of putting a frame around them, we have the means by which to call it our own. Humans are interested in frames, and when we encounter subjects within frames, we are interested in them because they suddenly become powerful subjects by the simple act of them being within a frame. Photography is about framing, and frames within frames are very, very powerful indeed. So taking a frame, taking your photograph, putting a frame around something is the act of what to leave in and what to leave out. And there are so many ways that you can frame the one photograph. What to leave in and what to leave out is entirely the decision. We take a landscape. How are we going to photograph it? How are we going to make this ours? There are many different ways the same thing can be photographed. Perhaps you should photograph it in very many ways, because you're never quite sure that you've got the shot. Format is one of the things to consider. Often cameras are designed to be held horizontally, and that can prevent us from thinking vertically sometimes. But taking the option of composing vertically and horizontally in the same instance gives us two photograph options in one. And sometimes the vertical is the more dynamic of the two images. Faces are often considered best photographed in portrait mode. But what about if we turn the camera around horizontally? Does it work? The simple act of turning a camera vertical or horizontal gives you two photographs in one, and sometimes gives you a more powerful photograph. Then there's aspect ratio. The image that comes out of your camera has a 2 to 3 kind of mathematical aspect ratio. Does that need to be the case? Not necessarily, because you can think when you're taking the photograph to yourself, how am I going to alter this later? How am I going to crop this later? Because I can't do it in the camera necessarily, but there are so many different ways that you can do so afterwards. Humans have peripheral vision that's much wider than a camera. And a panorama format, for instance, is very interesting, and panorama photographs are sold all over the world. But aspect ratio really is about your vision and how you intend to frame the subject. Horizontally, vertically, rectangle, square, panorama, all of these are options that are yours simply by taking your photograph, placing it in your computer, and using software to crop. When you're taking a photograph, another decision that can be made, especially of course with landscape photography, is horizon placement. Where in the frame are you going to make the horizon start, stop? Here, it comes from the leading line at the bottom right. Doesn't necessarily need to be the case. You could do this instead. Placing a horizon in the top third is very, very powerful if the landscape is powerful. But if the sky is more powerful, placing it in the bottom third is also dynamic. Where you place the horizon and the subject within the frame can change and shift its power in the image. Then there's something called looking room. Now this is interesting. When we place people inside a frame, often they're looking off camera. It's very effective. And looking room is that part of the space that they either look into or out of. The looking room can create a sense of balance in the image by giving the subject somewhere to look into or somewhere to move into if the person is indeed seen to be moving. But giving them less looking room creates some tension. What is outside the frame? What is this person walking toward? The way we frame our subject in that respect is very powerful indeed. So these are ways that you can consider how you'll be framing the subject in your photography in the future.